So I know you don't have a topic, but I have something I'd like to get off my chest that has come up on Facebook recently, and it's come up a few times in emails to the show before, and I think people are often surprised at our position on this, so I think I ought to lay it out on the show. And I fear this might be an ill-advised conversation in that it will generate as much email as like 9/11 Truth and feminism and all the other list of topics that I have that will get us email blasted. This week on Real Time with Bill Maher, Sam Harris was a guest. And as you guys know, Sam Harris and Bill Maher are big into atheism. And I'm going to say flat out, I am kind of a fan of Bill Maher. I know he's kind of a jerk face sometimes. I know that he has that whole anti-vax history. And I know that...
Which he did kind of backpedal from, too, when he was shamed over it. So, there's that, I guess.
I know that his treatment of women isn't always, perfectly on target.
There is that.
But regardless, he's a funny guy, and he has good guests, and I enjoy listening to his show. And Sam Harris was on, and they got into a little back-patting session about Islam. Sam Harris said he was promoting his book, which is Waking Up, and he said, liberals have failed on the topic of theocracy. They'll criticize white theocracy. They'll criticize Christianity. They still get agitated over the abortion clinic bombing that happened in 1984. The crucial point of confusion is we have been sold this meme of Islamophobia, where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam is conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people, which is intellectually ridiculous. So they go off on their little conversation about Islam, and then actor Ben Affleck, who's about to be Batman, jumps in and he says, I don't have the exact quote here, but he stopped them at some point and he said, whoa, man, you are being kind of racist. There was a bit of a shouting match, and on social media the next day, there was a whole bunch of haha, look at the dumb actor who doesn't know what he's talking about, and Sam and Bill Maher, totally right. And the very idea of Islamophobia is ridiculous, or alternately, it's admirable. And I got tagged in a post about this topic with the assumption that I was going to agree with that. And I don't. Now, it's true that religion is, first of all, people are saying that it's nonsense to say that dislike or fear of Islam can be racist because Islam isn't a race.
Yeah, that's actually the most common defense against, when people...
Right.
Yeah, you're trying to say, oh, you must be racist. No, I'm attacking the belief and not...
Yeah, and it's technically true that Islam is not a race, although a lot of times when you hear conversations about Islam, you hear, a lot of paranoia specifically about guys in foreign countries with beards, coming to kill us, and insults about the way they look and dress and stuff like that. So they do wind up being in common, but I think more importantly, religion is absolutely a set of beliefs, and it's culturally determined to a great extent. But race actually is also culturally determined to a great extent. My friend Guy P. Harrison, who's been on the show several times before, has actually written a book where he talks about the fact that the dividing lines between races and what races mean are a lot less objective and a lot more fuzzy than most people seem to think it is. But even though there's not really an objective definition of race, there absolutely is racism in the world. And it's not because people are basing their perception of people on some clearly defined and measured traits, but because they take mental shortcuts to sum up a person's entire character based on some hasty generalizations they make through superficial information. Now, we're the Atheist Experience. We do not like Islam, the religion. You know, we make no bones about that, and I agree with Sam that it's awesome to directly ridicule beliefs that don't make any sense, that are not based on any evidence. We do it every single week.
Right.
Absolutely agree with that.
And a very common question that we get here on the show is, well, why do you only focus on Christians? Because there's all this other, you know, there's Islam and there are all these other religions in the world, and we never hear you talk about. But of course we do, critique other religions as well, and we always have to keep pointing out that simply based on the fact, you know, that we're in America where Christianity is the majoritarian religion. That just happens to be what's on our radar most often.
We rarely get Muslim callers, but when we do, I mean, I specifically remember one call where this guy was promoting generic creationism, and then at the end he said, you should read the Quran, and I was like, the Quran? Seriously?
Yeah.
So we don't give any respect to Islam, the religion. But at the same time, I'm uncomfortable with the way that people like Sam Harris often seem to conflate outward appearances with the religion, and also conflate the fact that there have been a number of Muslim terrorist incidents with the idea that the stupid religion is the root and primary problem. Because there are extremists and there are liberals in any religion. A few months ago, Tracy and I and Beth and another friend of ours, Ben, we all attended this talk at a mosque, which was Islam 101. And we were, you know, a handful of white people, let's say, and we were surrounded by people who had very sincere beliefs in this, what I consider to be a nonsensical religion. But at no point in that talk did I feel threatened for my life, or, you know, find myself glancing at the exit, or fearful for them. All religions are kind of ridiculous when you come right down to it. Islam is weird, okay? They believe a lot of weird things. And I mistrust fundamentalist Muslims a lot. I'm also ethnically and culturally Jewish to the extent that that means anything. And I've read a lot of stories about really cultish Jewish groups like that insulate their kids and do arranged marriages. And there was a recent story where some Orthodox Jews like made this huge fuss on a plane because they had to sit next to a woman.
Yeah, I did see something like that, and that sort of thing just makes you think, what?
Yeah.
I mean, people willingly, allow themselves to kind of be part of these closed-in groups, and I don't know if it's just sort of a general xenophobia or just this desire. But something about being part of this in-group allows you to convince yourself of a sense of superiority,
right,
or what have you. But just really briefly, I can even kind of go you one better than like going to the Islam 101 meeting thing. When I was a little boy and my dad was in the oil business. We lived in the Middle East for 3 years. I lived in Dubai. Before Dubai was like the Vegas of the Middle East. It was just kind of a two-camel town, and it was reasonably developed. To date, I cannot recall ever interacting with or meeting or spending time, even as a small child, a nicer, more easygoing, friendlier, more helpful, more pro-free enterprise, pro-the American way, a group of people than all of those Arabs and all of those Muslims that we knew living in Dubai. We got to know the Sheikh and his sons, and then just the people who worked with my dad and worked for them. Awesome people, absolutely wonderful folks. I mean, I'd trust them with anything in a minute. But this was 40 years ago, right? I just aged myself. But this, and certainly the global climate has changed in that time. What has changed? Well, probably lots of bad foreign policy on our part, maybe. There's
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to, I do want to blame some of the foreign policy. I also want to blame religious fundamentalism.
Yeah,
and I want to say that, you don't fly planes into buildings if you don't think that that some kind of imaginary paradise is awaiting you on the other end.
Correct, but I mean, is it the case that that a great many Muslims over the last several decades have been radicalized, not only by these madrasas and by these teachers, in order to wage jihad? Of course, it's true. This is happening. Are there Quranic passages that they can point to and justify this violence with?
Yes, there are,
pretty
but there are a lot of passages in the Bible and the Torah that you can also use to justify violence.
So you can point to those things, those realities about the situation, and cast a critical eye upon that. But to say that all Islams are X and all Islams are Muslims, act and behave this way, and this is just what it is, and this is what these people are like, and we must be. When it goes from a criticism of the belief system and the ideologies and the deeds of these groups into just blanket xenophobia, you have now crossed a line, and that's probably where accusations of racism come in.
Yeah,
because to be fair, a religion like Islam and Judaism to a certain degree, the majority of the people in those faiths probably belong to a particular ethnic group, and so that is why sometimes there's perhaps racism informing anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, and I mean, racism and other forms of xenophobia are really just this all too human, I mean, they're not based on something objective. They're just really part of this all too human characteristic of defining an in-group and an out-group and dehumanizing the out-group. And it doesn't serve us in sort of the complex modern world that we have to navigate if you exhibit blind hatred towards people on top of dismissing and ridiculing their clearly incorrect, poorly informed beliefs.
Right.
I mean, which I'm not singling out Islam for that. Again, I do that with every single religion every single week right here. And Sam Harris isn't exempt from what I do consider some level of Islamophobia. I mean, a couple of years ago, he was writing posts about what a good idea it is to continue profiling people based on the way they look, to be singled out for airport security every single time. And he actually had this ongoing online debate with a security expert who was sitting there telling him he was wrong.
Yeah, like this doesn't actually work the way you say it does.
Right.
And then,
Or sometimes we get emails from paranoid Europeans who are outraged that their local grocery store has started offering halal-friendly selections. And I'm like, I'm supposed to care about this? Why?
Yeah.
I mean,
are they frog marching you over to that section and forcing you at gunpoint to buy that stuff?
Right. If you do not want halal stuff, don't shop there.
Yeah. Or just don't buy the halal stuff, right? It's like you don't have to buy that gluten-free crap just because supermarkets are full of it. It's gluten-free. I don't have celiac disease, so I'm cool. Thank you.
Right.
Now, give me the freaking gluten.
Yeah.
Give me all the gluten.
Gluten is delicious.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is the fact that somebody subscribes to one outdated book and not a different outdated book doesn't automatically make them a killer, okay?
Yeah.